وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My name is Athar Naseer, and I know we've got an intimate group today. Hopefully, we'll have more brothers join, inshallah, and maybe on the sister side. This is something that I've been interested in doing, I think, a little bit more in our community, just given, I think, some of the need in the community for talks around career advice, kind of how to handle career situations, whether you're early career, mid-career, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, whether you're looking for the job, whether you're thinking about, hey, I'm already in my role today, what do I need to do to get to that next level? We'll start to talk a little bit about all of those things. So really what I want to offer today is practical career development for those of you that are early to mid-career and wanting to kind of understand how the corporate environment works. And even if you're not in a corporate environment, I know we've got folks that might be in more specialized fields, whether that's medicine, whether you're an engineer, whether you're in something that's a little bit more specific. I think you'll find there's quite a bit that we can all leverage in terms of best practices when we look about how to navigate the career space, continue the momentum of moving forward. So inshallah, we'll get started. A little bit about me. So in terms of what I do, I'm an organizational effectiveness and talent management professional. So I work under the umbrella of HR, human resources. And what I do is not on the sort of hiring and firing side of HR, but a lot more on the organizational effectiveness, the leadership development. And so really working as an internal consultant to companies to say, how do we make good business decisions based on what we're doing within the company, within the strategy that we're deploying in the company? How do we make sure that we're leveraging our people and our human capital in the best way possible? So a lot of what I end up doing on a regular basis is around developmental assessments, performance management, things like succession planning. So how do you make sure you're pipelining your organization's roles appropriately? I do a lot on career development. So that's kind of what brought me here today. And so currently I work at Veritiv as my day job, and I work on the talent development side there. And education is, I do have a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. That's a lot of syllables. That basically just says I study the psychology of the workplace. So how do humans interact with the workplace, and how do we make sure that we're partnering together with our human capital to get the best sort of results in the long run. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of that journey of higher education versus not, and we'll answer some of those questions as well. I know we have an intimate group. I've got a few brothers for those on camera. I've got maybe 2 or 3 brothers in front of me. We'll probably have more join us as we go forward. So I like to make these very personable. If you have questions, please raise your hand, stop me. We'll go where the conversation needs to go, but I want to make sure this time is about you and getting you sort of what you need as you're starting here. So I've met these 2 brothers that are sitting in front. In terms of where you are with your career journey, are you currently working full-time outside of school, or are you in school now? Both. Okay, cool. All right. And so you're in school and you're full-time. So you're probably sort of doing a little bit of both, like career development, looking for the next thing, but then also, oh, okay, we'll talk about that. I had to do that myself. So what's not on the slide here is I actually started sort of a medical school hopeful, right? Like as you think about Southeast Asian cultures, everybody says, what? Go be a doctor, go be an engineer and a lawyer, right? Those are the only professions that exist. And so I think, like a lot of people, I fell into that, not because it was a bad thing, but because it was something that maybe I aspired to do, or I thought I aspired to do at the beginning. And of course, Allah guides us to the things that we are meant to do. And so along the way, I did have sort of a change in direction. And I had to rebrand a lot of myself from what I was doing and what I was trying to do in terms of the medical route, to then being internal to a company, to then being in the leadership development space. And so I can talk a little bit about that as well. So quick agenda, we'll talk about job search tips. I know this, whether you're starting out or whether you're advanced in your career, there's a lot that we can always be reminded of when we think about job search and what are those best practices. We'll talk a lot. There's a lot of debate nowadays that I meet with young people and say, hey, is it worth it for me to get an advanced degree or not? Should I go do that? And what's the benefit? What are the downfalls? We'll talk a little bit about how you can make sense of that for yourself. A little bit about interview best practices. How do you start to weave in the Muslim identity to your workplace, especially for those of us working in a corporate environment? asking for that time away for Salah, for Jummah, for all those things that we have as obligations upon ourselves as Muslims. And then, of course, at the end, we'll kind of close out with a little bit of a session on how do you do the career development piece of it. So now that you're inside the organization, or now that you're kind of working full time, how do you keep that at the forefront so you don't lose the momentum? And so you're starting to grow, you're continuing to build on the bricks that you've put down in place as a foundation. Make sense? If there's other topics that that you don't see on here, I'm happy to kind of divert in that attention, so please feel free to let me know. So in terms of the job search, you know, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is you know, whether you're currently working and you say, hey, it's time for me to dust off my resume and go find something else. I've been here long enough. Or you're earlier in your career and you're trying to figure out what to do. The best place to start is obviously going to be hey, what can I do? What do I offer? What am I qualified for? And I think it's okay when you start to do that to stretch a little bit in terms of what your qualifications are. But I wouldn't say don't stretch too far, right? Keeping that balance of, hey, what do I do and what could I possibly learn, with, oh, I'm clearly underqualified for this role, is going to be very important. And this becomes even more so with the advent of remote work and remote jobs, where, you know, you do have a little bit more of a away from the office kind of feel, so you can learn on the job, but tempering, hey, once you get hired, you've actually got to do the job as well, right? And then the job titling. I don't know if you all know this, but the job titling across companies varies significantly for the same job. For the most part, when you're looking, let's say you're in IT and you're looking for a developer role, a lot of times, yes, things will be as stated as such. It'll be a developer, but other companies may call it something very slightly different, and it'll be the same role. And so getting good at just understanding how companies label their jobs is going to be very important, because it just expands what will come up when you start to search. So understanding what are those top 2, 3, 4, 5 job titles associated with the type of job that you're looking for is going to help you kind of expand the search. And that's where I see people get stuck a lot too, is they don't even quite understand all the different titles for the one job that they do. And so they may feel that there's a lot more limited opportunity when really there's a lot more. And so you can just do some quick LinkedIn searches for that and get really good at reading what the job description is on LinkedIn. And you'll say, oh, they're calling it A, but it's really B at this other company, because it's the same thing. They're looking for the same stuff. Does that make sense? Tailoring the resume. So anybody tell me what that is?
Building up your resume.
Say that again?
Building up your resume.
Writing it, but in what way? I guess when we say tailor, yes.
Look at the job description first and make sure that you are within that description.
That's right.
What exactly they're looking for.
That's right. Yes. So the brother said.
Relevant to the description.
That's right. The brother said so managing to the job description a little bit, right? And so that's different and pasting from, right? But why do we do that? Why is there this advice to do that?
Take it till you make it.
Well, I don't know about that, but
kidding.
Yeah, it's something to do with Skynet. Go ahead.
Find out what skills you have that fits.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think to tack on to add, it is true. There's a lot of companies that do leverage software to screen resumes, right? So there is the sort of software screening piece of it. Not all companies do this. Where they can't afford to, they will. But then also the number of skills and what we call the skills within your job also differ. It's like the English language for everything, right? And so you may call it something on your personal resume that's not tailored to a job, but on the job, they're calling it something very slightly different, but it's kind of the same thing. And so understanding what's being asked of on the job will help you to really bring to the forefront what they're looking for in terms of the skills, capabilities, competencies, whatever those things are. And then you can also say, oh, where does it fall in my resume? The things that they're most interested in their role posting could be at the bottom of your resume. Maybe move it up to the top, right? These things matter. So the things on your resume and where they're located, how quickly and easy it is to find them, those things matter, because in a game of numbers, right, you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to kind of stand out.
But is it the job of the hiring managers to actually do the work and finding the right person, instead of us making it look like that we have those dependencies?
So I'm glad that you bring that up. So typically the process internally to an organization is going to not be the manager who's screening your resume. There's somebody in between. right? There are those in the talent acquisition space. So these are your recruiters, your sourcers. These are individuals whose jobs it is to find talented individuals who can possibly do the job and set up a pipeline, right?
I think that's in itself a little bit of a roadblock.
Okay.
I think in itself there is a problem in the industry when it comes to job placement and career development, because a lot of it is being modeled, not naturally produced for what it's worth, and the training that should be involved should be more of a priority rather than like a test.
It could be,
Yeah.
it could be, but then you could argue the same thing about getting into schools, right? I mean, I think in any space where there is competition and there are few placements for people, you will always find a system in place to help find the best people. Now, those systems, like any other things, vary across organizations. So some organizations do this very, very, very well. So they have a great system in place. They've got a good process in place. And they've got good recruiters who know the roles, who know the talent, and others who might not necessarily have all the right resources.
So I think it's more of a thing where we should inform job seekers the ins and outs of the job seeking industry, job seeking.
And that's what you're getting right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that there isn't a lot of being shared that should be shared. And there's a lot of gatekeepers out there who are not sharing information, and that poses a huge risk. And I believe that there's a lot of risks out there.
So just for the people on live stream, the brother's bringing up the concern that maybe there's not a lot of information sharing that's happening in how to get hired, how to kind of advance in the job. And so I think the nuance that I'll introduce in terms of my response to you is it's not necessarily that companies are gatekeeping this information. It's that people don't ask because it's not a secret, right? I think it's us taking the interest in understanding what those cogs of the machine are, what the mechanism is, because it's really not a secret. If you called up a recruiter today and said, tell me your hiring process and what all the steps to get to hired, they would probably tell you very similar things. Hey, oh yes, I'm the recruiter, I do this and this, and then it goes to this person, and then it goes to this person. So it's not necessarily a secret. It's really just understanding how does the process work and how do you make sure that you're standing out as part of that process.
Good.
Yeah. So I'm glad that that was great. I'm glad that you brought that up. And the other side of that from the business perspective is think about the managers that are in the roles, right? So while we would ideally expect that, hey, if I send this resume in, it's going straight to that manager, that doesn't necessarily always happen in this environment, maybe because of what they're working on, or also because maybe they haven't put a name to a face. And so we'll talk a little bit about what's on here, which is the networking piece, right? The networking piece and the personal connections, they go a long way to help you to put a name to a face, right? When there's a stack of papers, and it's that age-old advice of if there's a stack of someone's desk, but you've come in and you've been able to make that connection, you've met with the person, or you've cold emailed them, or you've done something where you've reached out to them on LinkedIn, those things are uncomfortable, yes. But they can yield results in the long run if you find somebody that is genuinely interested in making that connection and saying, oh yes, I remember this person. Now, what you can do to improve your odds of making very positive networking connections versus cold emailing and cold calling is to go, in terms of where your industry is, go to those things like the job fairs. Are there conferences that you can attend? Are there things that you can do that put you in connection with those individuals? Even here in our community, within the masajid, if you find out somebody's working in an industry that you want to be in, make that connection because they may know somebody. The world of work is a lot smaller than you think. People are very interconnected. And so that can also be something that helps kind of get you to the top. As I move down this, include a statement of purpose. I think the statement of purpose kind of replaces the old cover letter. So what's interesting is that a lot of organizations still ask within the online application tool, do you have a cover letter? Personally, and people might differ on this, personally, I don't necessarily think that you always need a cover letter. But what I do think helps is that you have a statement of purpose, right? A statement of purpose, very concise, 2 to 3 sentences at the top of your resume. What are you trying to do? If you're trying to break into a new area of work, you're changing careers, you're changing industries, or you're early in your career, talk about that in your statement of purpose at the very beginning of your resume. Hey, I'm an aspiring this. I'm looking to go in this direction, and I'm leveraging the education that I have and maybe the small amount of experience that I have to try to break into that. It explains what can't be explained when someone's just looking at bullet points on your resume, right?
How about someone in their late or middle to late career? Would that apply, and or would then the cover letter be more of a precedent on that topic?
I still think a statement of purpose is kind of the way to go. When you're later in your career, and that's one of the nuances, when I say later in your career, I'm thinking like director level and above, the hiring and the way in which you go about starting in an organization starts to differ, because you now have a lot more experience, and you're also in a position of, I won't call it power, but you because of that experience, it allows you to be in a little bit more of an equal footing when you're talking to companies, because you have something that they is that extensive experience, right? When you're early career, you still have that experience, but you're also trying to let them know that, hey, I'm ready to pivot, I'm ready to do what you need me to do. So there's a little bit of a shift in some things that can't be explained, because they can't just pull up your LinkedIn and say, oh, this person's worked this long, they have this self-explanatory sort of resume or LinkedIn that shows me all of that. Yeah.
If I can add,
Go ahead, please, brother.
I go through like 100 resumes a month.
Yeah.
Many interviews. No cover letter.
Okay.
Nobody's going to read it. Mostly recruiters are the ones who are going through your resumes, and hiring managers like myself. He mentioned statement of purpose. It's good, but what we're looking for is a quick way without having to read the whole resume.
Yeah.
What are you about? What can you offer for me, for the job that I'm looking for? If you can be very targeted about where you send your resume, for this and such job, and you write a very, very short paragraph, 2, 3, 4 lines max, or even in bullets, what are the skill sets that make you hireable because you meet the qualifications of the job and then some. That's a win, because then you want to read the rest of it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
You brought the very good thing, because I heard that from a long time ago from very, very professional guys. Said when you look at the resume, make sure we're not looking for like 2, 3 pages resume.
No.
Correct.
So be specific as
Yes.
As short you can do about explaining yourself, what you can do for the company. 1 page or 1.5, max. We just want to know what.
If you're early to mid-career, you shouldn't be longer than a page. If you're late, maybe if you've got, there's some roles in IT that require a lot of certification, that kind of thing. That helps, that might spill you over. I agree. What's the quick hit? Make it concise. One nuance I'll add to that is refrain, I would say, avoid putting things that platitudes. Platitudes meaning hard worker, quick learner. These things are things that anybody can put on your resume. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but I've seen some resumes where that's the bulk of what they're saying, right? You wanna back up whatever your qualifications are by putting what the specific things are. Whether you're a hard worker and you're on time and you're a good listener and all those things are good, but there's no way to differentiate that until you get to the interview and then someone gets to talk to you, right? So get to the quick sort of point. Yes, go ahead.
You tailor your resume more to be like AIs nowadays screen your resume.
Yeah.
So how do you make it like the AI will actually fit those?
So what we talked about earlier was, pull the job description or the posting online and just read through that, right? What are the skills that they're looking for? A lot of the time, what we mentioned before is there's a lot of synonyms for skills that we might possess or have. So you on your resume might call it one thing. In the job posting, they may call it another, but they may be looking for those specific phrasings and wordings. And so pull those out and make sure that you're using those specific phrasings. Don't copy and paste, right? Don't just say, hey, here's everything, but kind of be strategic in how you place that. Okay, I'll swap this skill out for the what they're calling it because that's what they need. And that's how you get sort of your resume picked. Yeah, but there's not going to be an easy way, right?
Yeah,
it's work. It's work.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
Like they've screened through 1,000 resumes quick, and then
Yeah.
just bring out like 5 maybe.
It's
that's honorary.
Yeah, it's the key skills, right? It's those key things that they put on their posting that you've really got to hone in on, and that's why when you're making those applications, make sure you may have 2, 3, 4 versions of a resume for one role that you're applying to across different companies, because they're kind of having different things, and it takes a little bit of time. Eventually, you get to a point where if you're applying, you'll probably have a few resumes that, oh, okay, this one's close enough, I can use this, and maybe tweak a few things. It won't take you as long. But at the beginning, sure, it takes a little bit.
Also noticed on some of the companies' websites. They make you like enter details, and then they automatically do a have to submit one.
Yeah.
Understand? You just enter the details they want.
Yeah.
Whether you've got so much experience, whether you can do this skill set or not, or they have a little test where you do it, and then they kind of evaluate you already, like they're on their websites.
So some of those have built-in sort of assessments. There's pre-screening assessments. A lot of that will just be to say, hey, do you have certain minimum to entry type of skills that they're looking for? Not a ton of companies leverage assessments for every role. Some roles are more specialized. Some of them will actually make you take a proctored exam virtually. So some of that is there, but a lot of it is just, they're just pulling down the information. That there's a big push in sort of the application space to make it easy for people. Most applicants to a job, they don't use this anymore. They use this, right? And so how do we make that easy? Companies are just as focused now on making it easier for you to apply as you are for it to be easy, right? And so there's going to be a big push on making sure everything's mobile optimized, is very easy, and that's why there's a lot of that.
So what you want to know is how people are actually searching for people that they're looking for.
Yeah.
Have a good LinkedIn profile. If you don't have one, your chances will be slim.
Yeah.
Have a great LinkedIn profile. There are tools that LinkedIn offers that companies buy that they're actually searching. If you don't have a good LinkedIn profile that describes what you do, your chances will be slim. Unless, obviously knowing people helps.
Yes.
Reference helps, yeah.
How much employment history you should be sharing if you are late in career and you have like 15, 20. How much? I mean, like, if you work like 4 or 5 different companies and you have a lot to explain, but what is the
20 years, put it there.
Put it there.
More than 20 years, maybe you can pick and choose the older stuff. But, yeah.
I might even go so far as to say less than the 20. So there's the way that I typically see is you want to expand on, because if it's the same role for the last 10 years, then that's going to be a big section of your resume, right? The other stuff doesn't have to be as detailed. It can be very short and concise. It doesn't even have to be bullet points, 2 to 3 sentences of what were the big highlights.
You should at least put all that 20 years, explain all the history, right, where you work, all that.
I would put the history, but I wouldn't have the detailed. Yeah. The history is fine. Yeah. Most organizations, right? They're going to look back maybe 1 to 2 roles, right? Or 5 to 10 years, right? That's because the bulk of why they're hiring you is for that 5 to 10 years of the last thing that you did. It's not, 20 years is great, but that's probably what they're going to see. What did this person accomplish in the last probably decade that's going to really make them able to come in and do what we need them to do here?
You're looking at resume, and the guy was putting like 90, in the late 90s, all the experience, which is no more relevant these days.
Yeah,
it's like, okay.
And if some of it is very early career, like
Right.
you were an intern, don't put your internship if you're 20 years in the game, right? Like you don't need to put that on your resume. It's not relevant anymore. Right. Yeah, right. The last thing I'll say on this slide is and I feel I need to call this out. Please, brothers, we are all Muslims held to a higher standard. Start off this in a halal way. And so what I mean by that is lying on your resume, misrepresenting your qualifications is something that is huge right now, especially in the world of tech, especially in the IT space. Because what I hear a lot is, oh, just tell them you can do this, put this on your resume, and then you learn it on the job, right? Don't rob yourself of your own risk and the barakah that's in that role by starting off that situation with a lie. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning on the job, but there is something wrong with saying that you can do something that you can't do right now and saying, oh, I'll figure it out later, unless you're telling the employer that, hey, I don't know how to do this right now, but I can learn. See, the nuance is a little bit. So make sure that we're starting off on the right foot, just as you wouldn't start off anything else in that situation, right?
I think the animus comes from play when companies are not willing to train.
You could,
And
yeah.
that's why people do that.
But does that make it right?
It doesn't make it right.
Right.
I've seen it more and more and more time again.
Yeah.
And I'm not the type of person to do that. But I've seen colleagues right next to me, and to my right, to my left, everybody who I've worked with. It's not okay. It's so huge that I'm thinking, well, why is it like this? And am I doing something wrong by being honest? And I've seen myself get put in the gutter because of my honesty, and that's a truth. That's a truth statement. I've been honest in my career, and they take advantage of me because of that. And I don't know.
I'll answer in a second. Let me get this brother's thoughts as well.
I was gonna say, does that depend on the role? Like, so I'll put you into the IT, but what I heard getting into that is that you're not gonna hire somebody who, like, networking is way further into the role, that you're not gonna hire somebody new into IT to be like into networking, because those people normally invest like millions of dollars, and they're not gonna hire somebody who's just now getting started into networking to manage their data and servers and stuff like that. So does it depend on the role?
I mean, so lying on your resume is never okay, regardless of role or not. But I think really what we have to ask ourselves too is right, if you consider sort of the world we live in, there are shortcuts to everything, and this is why our deen comes into play. There are shortcuts to making money, right? You can start to gamble, you can do things that are in the haram, and those people get ahead in that sense, right? And so the same thing, we don't realize it, the same thing happens in the world of work. You can get ahead. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work. But is it permissible for us, right? We have to think about that. You have to question that. Is it permissible for us? And I think we sort of lose that sense of not sense of morality, consider that, because, oh, it's work and it's sterile and this is how we do things. But we will be asked about how we made our money. And if you lied to get in, then I certainly don't want to be in that position where I have to answer for that. Right now, yes, you can still learn and do all those things, but my point of saying that is, be honest, and if you need that extra sort of bump, because you're right, they're not going to hire somebody if they don't see that you have the qualifications. So then it's incumbent on you to then figure out, well, how do I earn that qualification? How do I fill that gap? And how do I stay transparent? And there are people that will give you that shot. They see that you're taking the effort, they're putting in forth the effort. Okay, I don't have the experience. Maybe I went to this seminar, or I did this other thing to kind of fill that gap. And someone will come along and see that, and hopefully, inshallah, give you a chance. But I think it's better for us in the long run to start off that way in the right foot versus saying, yes, okay, I'm going to lie. And you still got to do the job when you get in there. And I've seen plenty of situations where it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I was just finding that because I was looking into the industry, and they said a lot of people want to skip the desk jobs.
Yes.
And get like straight into the big like networking and stuff like that. But they're saying that's wrong, because you have to start off with those entry level roles that maybe what you're looking to get into the field.
Right.
Yeah, you have to do that part first, and then slowly build your way onto the more difficult.
Yeah, and the advancement comes, right? The money will come, inshallah. I think there are things that you learn that can't be quantified on paper from doing some of those earlier entry level roles. There's a lot that you'll learn even beyond the hard skills. How do you work with other people? How do you manage other people without being a manager? How do you like all these things? And that's what makes you future proof in the long run. I think that's what's going to help other companies to then hire you for other roles, how you get promoted. Those things stack. And so make sure you're doing the stack, right?
I just want to add one more thing on the content of the resume. For those graduating, you would probably expect listing the courses that you've taken, your degree, that's going to get you hired. It's not, because everybody has it. If you have, for example, a technical IT job or a creative job where you're actually producing things, have a portfolio of projects that you've done on the side. Things that you've done, even if it's networking, the certifications that you've taken, what have you done, you practiced, showcase those personal projects, because that becomes your work experience even though you have not had a job. So it's not gonna make you stand out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Have a portfolio. So if you're a developer, what are some of the complex applications that you develop? Not like, I created a website. Okay, that's not good enough. Something really tangible, something for the creative people. What you have a portfolio website where you're showcasing your artwork and what you created, etc., etc. For other roles, it just depends on the role, but definitely have some personal projects.
And pro bono work, so work that you might do for free, is good. The nuance that I'll add to what Brother Adnan said is companies, while they like to see that work, where the real value is were you able to deliver value to somebody else, right? So if you just did it in a vacuum in terms of, I did this project for my teacher in college, it doesn't quite get the same reaction as, I worked with this person, I did some free work, and they were able to leverage this, right? To tell that story really shows that, because you're at that point, then you're having to deal with requirements of another person, and that's what you have to do in the job, working with somebody else. And so if you can showcase that, then that's usually ideal.
So do I do like a project for a buddy and then end up getting value from that, and I can showcase
Sure.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can say, hey, I did this for this person, and they were able to use it in their company, and here's how they used it, because they'll ask you questions about what you learned, how you were able to do that, what challenges did you navigate. That's different than I completed an assignment for school, which is still good. You learn the skills. It's a little bit different.
If you have a testimonial or something from them, yes, take it.
On LinkedIn, people can give you testimonials. That's a great sort of endorsement there. All right. So I just in the spirit of keeping us moving, a lot of the question I do get asked too is, well, do I need an advanced degree? And when I say advanced degree, I mean something beyond a bachelor's, right? You can call it your master's degree, your PhD. Now, what I'm not talking about necessarily when I say advanced degrees is certifications, and I'll get to that in a minute. So one of the things that comes up in terms of why you may want to get an advanced degree, and really even before I get to that, as I back up, the cost of education is continuously going up, and so having an advanced degree has some benefits, but we have to be the ones to do that return on investment analysis for whether it makes sense for us. And so you'll see I won't just say yes or no. It's going to be sort of more of a it depends. And so some situations where you might want an advanced degree is, hey, the position might require some specialized knowledge that you would get from the degree. Might not be the only way you can get the knowledge, but it could be a very efficient way to get that knowledge. You're breaking into a new field. So this is what I did. I, in my career, had to make a pivot from something that was very much healthcare focused to something that was on the HR side. And so I had two options laid out before me. And at this point, I was probably in my mid-20s. So I could have either started in an entry-level HR role, but then I'd have to invest quite a bit more time to learn the things that I needed to learn to get to the ultimate area that I wanted to be in. Still a viable option, right? But then the other was I could go and get an advanced degree. And when I was choosing which degree program I went to, I specifically chose one that major that you would get practical experience. You would partner with companies to do some work. And so that accelerated my experience. So I was able to, in 2 years, get a degree. That portfolio to display, I could have still done that working entry-level roles, but it would have taken a little longer, right? And so if it's a little bit easier to gain that knowledge to legitimize yourself, because on my resume it said one thing from the time before, I had to kind of make that shift, and people see that, oh, you went back and you got a degree. This person's serious about kind of changing direction. So that can be helpful. It's not the only way, but it can certainly be helpful. Useful for future career advancement. So you often see that in higher level leadership roles, some changing a little bit where they're not being required as much. But every so often you'll get to a place where someone will say, hey, in order for you to break this sort of glass ceiling to get to this next level, we would really like to see that you have this advanced degree, whether it's an MBA or whether that's something else. And so that might be something that you consider, but you can make that determination later. You don't have to do it all up front. And then the possible higher starting salary. So this one's actually a little bit true. So a lot of the times on resumes or on job postings, you will see that they'll ask for a certain number of years of experience, or they'll say if you have this degree, the number of years of experience goes down a little bit because that degree might afford you what they consider years of experience. But then also based on what you might be able to demonstrate from that advanced degree, you may end up getting a little bit higher of a salary. Is it going to be huge? No, it's not going to be huge. We're talking about what's still within their acceptable range, but they may offer you a little bit higher because they say, oh, this person has an advanced degree. They know a little bit more. They've done a little bit more. And so as long as you can demonstrate that, the degree might help and make sense. But I don't know that that would be the only reason by itself that you would go out and get an advanced degree. Any questions on that? I'll pivot to kind of like where it might not be helpful.
I just want to add certification. You can think of that, like you said, it's very important. Whatever certifications you can get. Now, don't only get certifications in your specific area. Get certifications in adjacent areas.
Correct.
So you are shown as well-rounded. For example, if you want to become a Scrum Master or Project Manager, also get some kind of a certification in business analysis. So now you seem suddenly more well-rounded, or a product owner. If you go doing Scrum, I don't know if this means anything. Do SAFe. That will show you more maturity, to show the hiring manager more maturity about you. So getting adjacent skills is very important. You understand adjacent skills, what I mean? related skills, not directly but indirectly related to the job.
So like, if you're getting into coding, not just coding, but also like communication, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's data visualization. It's how do you communicate to the business, and that's a big push right now. Is it's okay to be specialized knowledge and be able to do that work, but you're going to also have to explain that to a layperson. Yeah. So how do you build those skills up along with it? And so you're beating me to the punch here. I think that's the other sort of piece is when experience is a little bit more valued over a degree. That's another reason why you maybe don't go out and get an advanced degree, because they want that experience. And certifications do give you a lot of experience because it's the hard skills that you actually need to be able to do the tangible aspect of the job. So like Brother Adnan said, industry certifications might even be more valued. And in a lot of tech fields, they're more valued than just an advanced degree. More people, believe it or not, I see more people with advanced tech degrees. They're then going and getting all these certifications, whereas the person who maybe thought about this beforehand just has the certifications and they turned out to be just fine. They were able to save a lot of that overhead and investment early on up front. That return on investment. So when I bring this back up, not all advanced degrees afford you the high level salaries that you might think you could get. So just do a little bit of that digging. You know, there are so many people out there with varied degrees that are working in a field that's not necessarily, there's nothing wrong with that, but make sure that you do that analysis going in, especially for something like a master's degree. Those things are costly. PhDs are costly, right? You want to make sure that when I come out, here's what I'm going to be expected in the industry to make or to get paid, or the types of jobs that I can get. And if those two things don't equal out, then just make sure that you're making that consideration for yourself and maybe changing what you're looking after based on what kind of give you that viable outcome in the end. And then lastly, employer-sponsored education. So a lot of companies do offer education assistance. They may pay for a portion of your schooling. And so again, this is really advantageous in situations where maybe they want you to go back and get educated so you can get promoted through their organization, and they may even pay for a portion of that. So it's a win-win, win for them, win for you. And so maybe waiting until you get sort of in the industry to see a company that could afford you those things could be good.
Yeah, I was meeting somebody who was in the IT field, and they told me that they got their computer science degree, and once they got their job at UPS in the IT industry, then UPS made them get the CompTIA A+ certificates and a bunch of different certificates. So yeah, that's the one thing that I found interesting as well. That even though he had his degree and everything, the company was still making him get these.
Yes, because the company wants you to be agile to challenge for them, right? And so they will. There are a lot of companies who will do that. And so talking with people is kind of one of the ways. Sometimes the best way to figure some of that out is, hey, do I really need this, or can I get it a little bit later? And that's where you really have to understand what are you applying for when you looking for a role. To make sure that you're not necessarily doing too much too early, if some of that can be taken care of down the road. And there's a crawl, walk, run, right? There's a progression for yourself that you want to build so that you can make sure that you're making the good use of your time.
And a lot of people tell me that those certificates, like specifically in the IT industry, help them way more than their actual computer science degree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the table stakes to enter any field, for the most part, is a lot of roles require a bachelor's degree, right? You could have a general bachelor's degree in something else and then go and get certifications. And I think that's the beauty of certifications is you might have a degree in communication or journalism. I actually had this happen a lot and then that person says, hey, I don't want to do this. I want to go into IT. They go get the appropriate certifications and they do some project work and they can get into a role. Or you can do a boot camp. So boot camp is another way. It's, hey, condensed, quick, sort of 2-3 months of learning something. And there you go. That might be enough to just get into a certain role. Now, that's not obviously going to apply to all areas. We're talking a lot about tech. In the area that I work in, it's not going to work. Certifications are something that you sort of build on after. So it just depends on the industry as well. Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing. If you're done with this slide, if you're a technical person, you computer science or something like that, some kind of even a boot camp or something. Get in my opinion, level and even some of the early career technical people, they almost know nothing about how business works, how the world works. They just know their world So you're already boxed in, and people are only going to talk to you as a laborer. Hey, do this for me, do that for me, right? But if you can change your language to be more business minded, where you're actually adding value, you're having valued conversations. Why are we developing this? How do we develop this? Get a product owner certification, or what I'm trying to get to really is, if you can afford it, get an MBA. If you can get an MBA, you again that well-rounded concept. You're technical, but at the same time, you show that you're business-minded. And getting an MBA, for example, going through that for a couple of years changes your language, changes the way you think, and that shows when you actually do it. So, if you can afford it, definitely get it. It's very expensive to do it. You can do it on your own, as long as whatever you do, you're able out of that technical rigid of just being just that engineer or technician. Yeah. If you cannot be that, you could be that. But if you not be that, that's great, right? For example, I often give an example. I know this is a much of this, but this analogy may not work, but it's an analogy you will understand. You can learn how to play the piano or the guitar or whatever, but if you can't really uh, move the audience with you, that they're clapping, then it doesn't really matter how well you can play the guitar, because you're not really touching their heart. You know what I mean? Technical skills are that way. You might know them, but you're not able to articulate them, and articulation is going to come from that business mindset. Does that make sense? Anyway, I don't want to go too long.
No, yeah, it's a fair point. My advice on the MBA though is you will have the most success and you will get the most out of your MBA if you work a little bit first.
Yes.
Because we see a huge difference. We see a huge difference in those that go straight from undergrad to their MBA program versus those who work for a few years. Why? Because a lot of MBA programs are structured to actually solve business problems. If you have no business experience, it's going to be in one year and out the other. And I promise, and this is what I did when I went and got my master's, though it wasn't an MBA.
I got it later too. Paid dividends.
Because you come to the table with actual problems and you go, oh, I had this situation happen at my workplace, or they're dealing with this right now. And so then that really changes your thinking. And I think you have to learn to play the guitar first, for sure. There's no, in that analogy, right? Great supplementation. It takes you to that next level.
I was looking at a while ago, and it's something I really wanted to do, but I was blocked by so many life situations I couldn't get to it. But that's something I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's very helpful. If there's one degree that's kind of a good general degree to get, is an MBA.
The cost was.
It
is expensive. Expensive is one of those things.
Yeah, but we can find ways around it, because the goal is for you to change the language, the way you see, the way you talk, the way you present yourself, the way you think about problems. If that doesn't change, then spending $100,000 is not going to make it.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. All right, we'll jump a little bit into sort of interview stuff. I'll go through these a little bit quick. I think some of this may be review for a lot of you, but research the company just as you're tailoring your resume. Learn about the company, act interested, right, and find out, well, what are some of the things they're working on? What do they do to make money? Are there some challenges that they're dealing with that you might learn from if stuff comes up in the news? Those kinds of things. What are their values? It doesn't hurt to be knowledgeable when you go to the interview on that, and prepare questions ahead of time. So there's always, in every interview, is questions at the end. Please prepare questions. Even if you feel like you don't have anything to ask, have those things, 5 or 6 questions. And these can be general things. You can ask about, you'll probably learn about the responsibilities of the role, talk about the team dynamics, ask about those. What are their current challenges? What are some high priority tasks? What are they looking to get out of this person that they're going to hire for the role? What keeps them up at night? Those types of questions really show not only that you're interested, but that you're also thinking about, if you were to enter the role, what are some of the things that you may jump into as you do that? Make sure that you understand the job posting, right? Review that before the interview. You have your resume, and that's great. Understand the job posting too, because they can slightly differ, and you want to make sure you're on that same level playing field. And then research competitive salary for the role. And I say competitive specifically because it needs to be that. It needs to be competitive. We're very fortunate. You have Glassdoor, salary.com. You have all these websites that you can get a general range given your years of experience and the type of role. And so go in with that mindset of, hey, here's the range that I know I'm going in with. And so that way you're not offshooting and saying something that's way too much or undercutting yourself. And you'll learn that with practice in terms of how often you do it, but it is something to still be cognizant of.
So on the pre-interview also, if you're younger and you don't really know how the world works yet, you're going to learn that, inshallah. Researching the company is extremely important, right? If you're doing an interview, you don't know anything about the company, ask your parents, ask your uncles, ask your seniors, help me understand what this company does, because you don't really know. Don't be shy about that. If you're going to be arrogant about, oh, I can figure this out, you can't figure this out. Most people can't figure it out. And you will impress the hiring manager if you know about their company.
Right.
And if you don't know anything about the company, all you care about is the job, then you're already the below average person that they're talking to.
Well said. I have nothing to add to that. That's good. During the interview, some of these hopefully make sense too. Arrive early, right? Dress professionally. So I think I was reading something now that a lot of the companies are doing away with ties for the interview. Kind of use your common sense knowledge there. Some companies are still more formal than others. And so you'll never lose anything for men if you wear a tie, but just make sure you're dressed professionally. And then use the STAR method when answering interview questions. Has anybody heard of this?
Yes.
STAR method, right? So I'm going to skip the last 2 bullet points for a second and go to the STAR method. So the STAR method is just a very formulaic way to answer interview questions. So imagine, or think of, the best way to think about interview questions is not, did I get it right or did I get it wrong? I'll think of it as a points-based system. I want to achieve the maximum number of points for any question that I possibly can. And how do you do that? Is you expand on a number of different areas, as many as possible within a question. So they may ask you some behavioral questions that are, tell me about a time when, right? And so the more things you can demonstrate in that answer, so they might say, tell me about a time where you had to work with somebody that was difficult to work with. Okay, seems like a straightforward question about relationships with people. But how do I now weave in a specific project or body of work that they may be in, right? If I'm in IT, maybe I was working on a very specific project. I say, oh, we were working on this specific project. Let me just tell you a quick highlight of that project. We had to do X, Y, Z for this project. Okay, you're demonstrating that you've done this body of work. Then you can jump into how you dealt with the person. And then you can demonstrate how you not only accomplished the work, how you did manage the relationship with the person. And so you can kind of expand on that. I've interviewed so many young professionals who simply answer the question at face value. And it's challenging because you see that we're really looking for a little bit more. And that leads me to also say, don't be vague in your answer, right? You don't just want to say, oh yeah, well, we did this, and that was it. And there's not really much detail or anything like that. You give a little bit of detail. And so how we do that with the STAR method is start with the situation. There are other models like this. This is just one that I like, is situation or task. Explain what the situation is, give them context. You're weaving the narrative, right? What exactly happened? What's the situation? Set the scene kind of thing. Talk about the actions. What are the details that you did? What did others do? How did you interact with them, right? Demonstrate those leadership capabilities as well, right? Making sure that you're tying on to how did you lead with people? That common question that I just threw at you about working with a difficult person, the answer that I often get is, well, I talked to my manager and they talked to their person, and then no, what they're asking for is, can you work with somebody and turn the ship around and bring them along with you, right? Can you bring them along with you? And that way we see that you can kind of build a team that way.
Turning a negative into a positive.
Turning a negative into a positive, right? And then the last piece, the R, is results. So what was the outcome of the actions that you took or that others took? Why was it effective? And what was the achieved results? And so you can even practice this in your responses. Is okay, situation, task, action, result, and kind of go through it that way.
I just wanted to add, if you find yourself where the person interviewing you is asking you a lot of questions, or you interview in such a way that they're forced to ask a lot of questions because you don't provide a detail, you're going in the wrong direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't want the interviewer to ask tons of questions, especially if you recognize that they're asking about the same thing different ways.
Yes.
That should indicate to you you're not answering their
Right.
question.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're making the interviewer do a lot of work, you're failing.
Yes.
Because they've talked to
Yeah.
hundreds of people already. They don't want to waste their time, right? They just want to get to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, the follow-ups.
They want the meat,
Yeah.
not the bone. They want the meat. Give them what they really
Yeah.
what they're really asking
Because
for.
if somebody's making me do a lot of work, I just give up. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, it's the follow-ups. If there are a lot of follow-ups to the original question, that's exactly what's happening. Is you haven't hit sort of the areas that they want you to hit.
It's good to also ask more. If you're the person getting interviewed, you want the interviewer to be more accurate, or precise. So you could say, would you like to know something this or that, or ask them a question so that you can expand your answer.
No, you can always just stop me. Just stop me. I'm going to continue and expand on this. Stop me if I've answered your question.
Yeah, or if you need clarification to figure out what direction to go. Yeah, that's fine. Ask for the clarification before you launch off into a narrative. But I think to that point, it's better to say more, assuming it's relevant, than to just have it very, very short, and then they're kind of left with, okay, that didn't really answer my question.
I'll teach you a trick. Read news articles and see how news articles.
That's a good one.
Written. Right? Beginning is a short summary of everything about the article. The first paragraph is the summary, then it's the detail, then the conclusion. Don't start with the details. Start with the summary.
Yes.
Start with the summary, and it's like, I can expand more if you'd like, and they'll nod or something, right? And then you continue. That would be another way to do it. If you go straight into the detail and the interviewer is having to figure this out, what is it that you're really talking about? I can't make sense. You're lost. You're completely lost.
The basic who, what, where, when, why.
Right.
Right. From public relations.
That's right. That's right.
Gives you that foundation.
Yeah, and the situation, exactly. With the situation piece, it's, oh, hey, I can think of a time where, for that question, that we had a very difficult employee that was working with us, and this was the project. And let me tell you a little bit about the project. And so then you can kind of go that way. This. You set the story. I think we covered these last two bullets here. Ask thoughtful questions, and then, of course, ask and understand what are the next steps. Right. Always ask that at the end of the interview. Is what are those next steps? What can you think about? So post-interview, please send a thank you email. Something generic is better than nothing. Though I do typically advise that you try to tailor that email if you can. If you were able to make a connection in the interview, like they talked about a very specific thing or project or what they love about the company, just whatever that is, it can be nice to kind of put that in so that people know you're not just using ChatGPT to put your response out there. I love these
when I get these. I really appreciate somebody who does.
It's personable.
It works a lot.
Because it doesn't feel like a transaction. It feels human.
Yeah.
But you got to do all the right.
Even if you did it all wrong, still do that.
Yeah.
You got to do the interview with the right answers, with the 100% authentic dialogue between the two persons, and then you do the follow-up interview, the follow-up email with the notation on the previously conversed dialogue, and further answer your questions here, what we talked about, and this is what I'd like to just remind you with.
And if it was a pleasant experience, let's say you didn't fit the role, but it was a pleasant experience for the interviewer, a thank you email reminds them, oh yes, I did have a pleasant experience. Look, at this person, they just sent me a thank you. And they might think, okay, let me refer this to my peer or my coworker.
Right.
They might need this role. Let me recommend. So it just prompts another action.
Or they can point you to the right direction of what you need.
Sure. Absolutely.
And go ahead.
I just want to know, when you're interviewed by, say, a team.
Panel, yeah.
Yes. Do you just send the email that first interview one to the HR department?
No, send it to each of them. And that's a great one. Ask the HR person for their email addresses. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh yes. Oh yeah.
If they don't give it, you can send it to HR person, and they will forward it over. Oftentimes they will. Do
or leave that choice up to them. Would you mind? You can tell them, hey, would you mind sending me their email address? I'd love to send a thank you email. Or if you would prefer, I can send it to you, and you can send it to them, and they'll tell you either way. I think the last thing I'll say on the email is it can also be a great opportunity to reinforce the qualifications that you have based on a specific challenge or situation they're working with, to say, hey, we talked about this, and I think it's a good fit for my skill set, having worked on X, Y, Z. And again, keep it short. You don't have to do a whole story, but it can still. There's a lot of different directions you can take a thank you email in.
Like you were saying before, they like you, but you didn't quite fit that area. They can point you, okay, you can work on this, and then.
Absolutely, yeah. Follow up when appropriate. So, you don't want a company to ghost you, but sometimes it happens where you don't hear back in the appropriate amount of time. So that's where we go back to ask for next steps, ask when you might be hearing back, and when and it's usually about a week. Most on average, most companies will say, hey, we'll get back to you in about a week or so. If you haven't heard back, it is very okay to send an email to the HR person, the recruiter, and just ask for an update and say, hey, looking very forward to hearing back from you. I hadn't heard from you, thought I'd check in, that kind of thing. That's very okay. So if you don't get the job, you go through the interview, you go through the process, you don't get the job, ask for feedback. Now, I will tell you in transparency, a lot of times you won't get it. But if you had a good interview experience, you may actually get it, especially if you do the thank you email. If you reach out to the HR person and say, I understand you went in a different direction. Is there any feedback that you can provide me? It's a very normal question, and they'll tell you sort of what they can tell you, right? But there's nothing wrong with asking for that. And then the other one, just again, weaving who we are as Muslims, don't despair, because again, risk is from Allah, right? So that thing that you really wanted badly may not be the best for you. Keep that in mind, right? These are still very practical things for us to remember as Muslims, because we can get very disheartened and say, oh, I've applied this, I really wanted, I thought it was going to go well, but maybe it wasn't meant for you. Inshallah khair, maybe there'll be something a little bit better.
I'll give you a tip on the feedback. You may not get a response, right? Because you're making an interview do work, right? They only have a few minutes in a day, right? Why would they invest in you when they don't even need you? You know what I mean? Make that job as easy as possible, right? When you ask for the feedback, maybe the interview, the type of questions they asked you, or from the job description, ask, how did I do in this? Rate me from 1 to 5. It'll make literally 10 seconds just to give you 5, 3, 2, 1, whatever rating.
Good, yeah.
Boom, done. You got your feedback.
Yeah.
Make it easy on them.
Yes, you want to make their life easier. Yes.
Just I'll ask one more question to everybody. What about the salary expectation? Question comes in and say, well, what is your expectation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So frankly speaking, never tell them what you currently make, right? You will shoot yourself in the foot every single time. And a lot of companies will ask you, what are you currently making? Irrelevant, okay? What's relevant is, where are you comfortable, right? And it's very normal for you to say, I can share with you where I am looking to be or where I would be comfortable, right? You can sidestep the question, and instead of telling them exactly what you want, you're not required to give them your current salary. But it goes back to the conversation, make sure you have an understanding of what the competitive salary is. A lot of people may sometimes try to ask the HR person, well, what is your range? Certain states now require there to be a transparent range. States like California, New York, these are states that require that an actual salary range be put out there when they do the posting. You wouldn't have to ask for that though. Why? It would be on LinkedIn or wherever the post is. They'll probably say that this range, depending on experience. If there's no range, you're probably not going to get a response to the what is your budget or what are you looking for, because they're not going to play all their cards, right? And so that's where you do have to do some good hypothesis investigation for your area, role, that kind of thing, and then you'll have to put it.
They want to pay you as little as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
They want to pay you as little as possible.
Correct.
So the lowest number you agree to, they'll be like gold.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So aim on the high side, but know the ballpark, know the boundaries. You don't want to overshoot so much that they're like, this person doesn't even know what the going salary range is. And sometimes it can work in your benefit. If you're a little bit over, they may say, oh, that's a little bit higher than what we were trying to pay. Our max is this. And then you have your answer.
Can you be just open with the thing? I'm open with the whatever the competitive salary out there is.
That doesn't tell them anything.
It doesn't tell them anything, and then it puts.
If you put a number, that's what you're looking at.
No,
but
aim
that is
for
high. Or you never know.
Do the research. Go to Glassdoor.
Yeah.
Look at the ranges and aim for the high number.
Right.
And see what you can get. Negotiate down.
If you leave it up.
You know, the
Mistakes
companies
like
are
that
in
in my
different
life.
states, right?
If
You
you
work from home, and the different states are different numbers. Now the
Yeah.
numbers are in different states. Different salary
Yes.
ranges too.
but even
So
just
you put a number to
Glassdoor,
yourself, then you know
Glassdoor.
that, okay, hey,
Glassdoor.
Glassdoor.com.
yeah, Glassdoor is good.
Because you can input the state, the role, the years of experience, and it's generally pretty close to accurate. Always ask for more than a little bit more than maybe what it's saying, because then, again, there's going to be some negotiation. But yes, absolutely.
What about if it's going to be like an entry level first job? You get, I guess you could say, accept a little lower rate if it's going to give you some experience.
You can.
That's up to you.
It's up to you.
That's where you are.
It's up to you.
But because some jobs, I guess they want somebody who already has experience, and there might be some jobs who have So it just depends on the job, or
Be self-aware, as I tell people, right? I think when we're young, we want, oh, money, money, money. I got to ask for the most I want. Other companies know your entry level. So they know the value of that skill, and they know that they can throw a rock and hit somebody with the same skills that you have because you're entry level. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's true. The talent pool is bigger, right? You haven't shown and proven yourself. And so there are times in our careers where we may take something that's a little bit less than what we would want. The goal, though, is to say, okay, this is not a forever thing. I need that 1 year of experience or that 2 years of experience to then make a bigger jump up. But I think you have to have that self-awareness of, okay, can I ask for a little bit more? Is there wiggle room, or am I being unreasonable knowing that I'm entry level? And I think that has to be done as well. Yeah.
If you're entry level and you're at the negotiation at the offer letter phase, right?
Let them tell you no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let them tell you no.
Yeah.
Put it out there.
But you might be one of the few that they're actually talking to. So you might stand out with a lower number if you want to get the foot in the door.
Oh, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So the opposite side of this that I see on the HR side is sometimes it can be great to come in at the higher level. So maybe they'll say, hey, we can only pay X amount, but you're so pushing us so much to have higher salary. We're going to talk to the higher ups. We're going to get you the higher salary. Okay, good. But the company may have buyer's remorse after you come in if you don't demonstrate the value of that money. So it can be very dangerous to come in overcompensated. Because then you become a target for the rest of the company when they're cutting costs. Well, we have this person. We thought we were getting Rolls Royce. We're getting Toyota. So
you come in with a low offer, and then you offer them more value. And then
I would say it's a balance, right? It's a balance, right? You don't want to be so off the range that you've sold yourself so well that now you can't on the promises that you made in the interviews, right?
I'm saying, like, you accept a low offer the company more value, and they can possibly give you an increased salary or something.
It's the experience versus kind of the paid, right? Sometimes the experience is worth its weight in gold, and for that, I would absolutely advise if you need to take a lower salary. Right. So I got a 10-minute warning. I'll finish this slide. I think we've talked about a lot of this. Is ask for the if you do get the job, ask for time offer and make sure you get an offer letter before you start any kind of negotiation, right? So they'll tell you over the phone, hey, we're excited to offer you this role. They'll read off some of the things. Okay, that's great. I need a little bit of time to think about this. Can you send the offer letter to me at your earliest convenience? You want it in writing, okay? Number one. And then make sure that you're evaluating them in that time that you're taking. It's very normal, 2 to 3 days, maybe even up to a week for you to ask for that amount of time. Don't ask for too much because they're also trying to get someone in. They know they have to not only hire you, you have to pass a background check, you've got to get trained, you've got to do all these things. So they're looking to hit the ground running. So you don't want to overdo that. But at the same time,
even 2 weeks they might take because they have to get approval for your salary.
Yeah.
The recruiter is recruiting you is not authorized to say yes or no.
Yeah.
They have to get approval.
They do have to get approval. So when I say evaluate the employer, things like benefits, what else do they offer? Paid time off, do those things, and make sure that feels well for you, fits well, before you just say yes because I have the job offer, right? It's okay to evaluate them a little bit. Ask the questions if you need to from the recruiter on, hey, can you tell me more about the benefits? I'm not getting what I need from the materials you sent, or whatever that case is. Look for 401k. This is a huge one, by the way. Most of you are early career, young. If you don't have a 401k, it's the first thing you need to do as an investment account for yourself to build for your retirement, because time is on your side with a 401k, and the best companies to work for are those that match your contributions. And so that's something that's very normal for you to ask about in the process is, do you match my contribution 401k? And they'll tell you how that works. So with a few minutes remaining, I have a lot more content, Brother Adnan, so maybe I'll have to do a second sort of like, session to this, but I'll open it up for a few questions before we break for Maghrib.
So what advice do you have for not jobs, but what about internships? Do you have to look for specific companies that have like internships?
Yeah, that's a great one. And internships can be a great sort of experience booster as well because you're getting paid to do it. Summertime is typically when most companies are doing internships. They start to hire though. They start to do the process in about February.
That's normally the larger companies that do internships.
No, it just depends. It's all over the place. But you can usually find them. I will say they'll post on LinkedIn or Indeed or these other sites. So look for them. But it is a great way for you to get some experience very quickly. Yeah, that's a great one.
It's all about that portfolio.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And what better way to get experience than to get paid for it, right? So most internships are paid. Some are not, but most are. All right. Well, I'll be around for Maghrib, of course, and afterwards a little bit. So if you have any questions, if I can do anything again, I'm very happy to talk about a lot of this, and hopefully we can kind of continue the session. I know there's a lot that I didn't get into today about, okay, you're in an organization. What are the things that you need to do to get promoted, to get to the next level? What are companies looking at? And if there's enough interest, inshallah, then maybe I can come back and do that.
Letting me interject.
Yes, absolutely. No, it makes it better. I like a more informal session, so that's good. Next time we got to have you here, though.
They can hear me. I was on purpose.
Oh, okay. Good.